A question, then. If I were to stand aside, what would you do to this icon? You've missed your part in this, I'm afraid.
Is that what this was all about? All the meaningless death and destruction, so you could feel something?
Meaningless? Those who survive are stronger for it. Men die that others may live. A pity. There is another alternative, or there would be, had you only mastered your abilities. Man should fight for the joy of it. To live, to eat, to breed. Lesser beasts snap and howl at one another for this. Only man has the wisdom and the clarity to embrace violence for its own sake. For we who are born into this merciless, meaningless world have but one candle of life to burn.
Welcome to another ultimate guide for another caster in Shadowbringers, the Summoner, also known as the caretaker of floor tanks. The Summoner wields a magical book to conjure powerful affliction spells onto his enemies that inflict pain over time, while summoning impressive Aggie versions of some of our all-time favorite primals. Unlike the Black Mage, the Summoner has tons of utility, like strengthening his groupmates, as well as having the ability to raise them to continue their fight. All this is done while still providing quite a solid personal DPS. Although his rotation and playstyle may have been made a bit more difficult in Shadowbringers, it feels much more logical and creates a fantastic rotational flow that makes him powerful against movement requirements, and compared to the other casters, his flexibility is without any flaws. Especially when compared to his state in Stormblood, where dying would completely kick the Summoner out of his 2-minute cycle, throwing him back at the starting point of his build-up, with mostly no cooldowns at his disposal. I'm glad that we are released from this situation. Regarding equipment and stats, the Summoner still refuses to profit much from a high spell speed value, especially due to the decrease of Bios and Miasma potential in comparison to his other damaging spells or pet abilities. And if you really want to fine-tune that as well with the rotation I'm showing later on, a 2.48 global cooldown would be the optimal goal to reach with it, but I couldn't do so myself, and that really is a fine-tuning aspect. So don't worry. Therefore try to aim at getting the highest weapon damage as possible while sticking to a solid item level. After that, you can't do anything wrong with a heavy crit rating, which is underlined by a quite heavily stacked direct hit rating as well. Above that, crit being the only progressive stat will synergize heavily with the Dragoon in your party and will increase in power the more you can stack it. So if the later patches allow a crit rating above 3.5k without sacrificing weapon damage and int, we will see a massive boost to our damage. Another quite solid stat is Determination, which amplifies our overall damage output quite decently, so just hit that value when your direct hit and crit stats are completely maxed out on a specific piece. Nevertheless, gearing specific stats may be more important for the Summoner as it is for the Black Mage, but making a difference in the resulting DPS is also much more dependent on the correct use of your spells and abilities. So let me cover the most important stuff for you. That mentioned, I would like to thank the great Tsundere Imouto for his support on the theory crafting and in-detail information this guide includes. He's one of the best Summoner players who always tries to pinch out the last bit of improvement, and I'm very glad to have his wisdom and effort joining this guide. Therefore, let us cover the basics and some of the in-depth theory on how the Summoner works. Most of these information are still quotes from Tsundere's comprehensive written guide, which will be available at some point, and I will put the link for it in the description when he finished it. The first thing to mention is that our rotation still turns out to be a 2-minute cycle, with much better logical procedures and some that are worse than before, but don't worry, we will get through this. Because of having quite a vast amount of feedback telling that the new 5.0 summoner is insanely difficult, I will try to break down his basics for every stance, from which the summoner has 4 and 5 if you want to take it precisely. So let us start with the summoner stance or normal stance without any enhanced Egi, Dreadwyrm or Firebird Trance active. By the way, to not overcomplicate things, always stay on Ifrit for single target fights and choose Garuda when 2 or more targets are present. In the summoner stance during the opener, our goal is to prepare everything for a clean switch into the fast Dreadwyrm Trance and Bahamut Phase after that. Therefore, we are sticking to a precast Rune 3 followed by the pet attacking command and Rune 2. Therefore let us talk about clipping. The summoner has many OGCDs. These OGCDs are the reason why he doesn't really gain much value from spell speed. On the other hand, these are his heavy bursting attacks and abilities, so it is very important to have them at the correct position. Therefore we don't want to place them right after a hard cast Rune 3, because by using OGCDs then, you would delay or clip another Rune 3 or Rune 2 that could weave as a follow-up directly. That is why we continue with Rune 2 after Rune 3, due being an instant weaved spell. It grants us a little time span and opportunity to weave in one OGCD, and in the best case 2 OGCDs, while waiting for the recast timer. This is one of the absolute essentials, so try to never weave in OGCDs after a hard cast Rune 3. So always let Rune 2 or 4 follow, to get that recast timer space for weaving in OGCDs. That mentioned, we go back to our first stance. Here we are trying to get into Dreadwyrm Trance as soon as possible. That means directly after applying dots and while having created that space inside of the recast timer of Rune 2. Now all of this theory of clipping is made much easier, because inside of Dreadwyrm Trance our Rune 3 becomes an instant cast, and we can weave in everything we want directly after it. That means now our goal is to get rid of as many OGCDs as we can, while being in Dreadwyrm Trance. Try to weave in 2 OGCDs after each Rune 3 and always start with Energy Drain, granting access to one of our most powerful spells, Fester. Then should follow the Egi Assaults, because we want to start their recast timer early and want their procs to grant Rune 4, but those will be saved for the Bahamut Phase. Afterwards, we should use Ether Pact and Enkindle to make them synergize with other raid buffs and maybe throw in the first Fester, which can be delayed as long as you would not override ether stacks by using another energy drain. Then after using 6 Rune 3s, burst in the Deadly Death Flare and directly click on Summon Bahamut, which throws us into another stance. The Bahamut stance, the one where many people are wasting precious worm waves, just by not knowing a badly designed mechanic and how to work around it. Don't worry, I didn't know it by myself until the mighty Tsundere brought wisdom to me. The reason why we call this opener Easy Bahamut is explained here. First of all, Bahamut will support your spells by pushing out worm waves after each spell. That is no OGCD. The problem now is that when summoned, Bahamut will deny any form of reaction for around about 1 second, so casting Rune 2 or 4 directly when hitting the Summon Bahamut button would completely be ignored by our loyal dragon, because the engine needs a while to realize that he has come to destroy our enemies. To work around that, just easily push out a hard cast Rune 3 right after Summon Bahamut and skip his summoning sickness with a cast time. Then we will use Rune 4 to get in Akhmorn while clipping is prevented, and continue with 3 additional Rune 3s, until we use another Rune 4 against clipping to weave in his second Akhmorn. Now comes in another workaround for a badly designed behavior of Bahamut. If we would cast Rune 3 after the second Akhmorn again, it would delay Worm Wave until the end of the cast time, and even if Rune 2 would be right inside of the Bahamut window, the engine would not realize it correctly. And now I hope you get the idea behind holding back Rune 4 procs for Bahamut. Using them in Dreadwyrm Trance would waste those procs due to having instant cast Rune 3s anyway. And we would be forced to use the much weaker Rune 2 for Bahamut's Akhmorn usage. To sum this up a bit, your goal here is to get out 8 Worm Waves, 2 Akhmorns, while avoiding any form of clipping and making use of your Rune 4 procs Energy Drain and Fester. That done, we come back into the caster stance, which always finds its place between Bahamut and Phoenix, and after Phoenix until Dreadwyrm Trance. Now is a good time to earn yourself more Rune 4 procs with Aggie Assaults, and maybe to recast Miasma and Bio manually, if needed. That mentioned, try to always recast your dots manually only a single time inside the whole 2-minute cycle, and make use of Try Disaster otherwise, that always will be reset when you enter Firebird or Dreadwyrm Trance. Try to prioritize Rune 3 over Rune 2 by mindful positioning, and wait for your Firebird Trance to put you in the last stance. Arrived there, you will have a Phoenix summoned by your side, which supports your magic attacks with Scarlet Flame, like Bahamut does with his Worm Waves, and because of having a switch from 1 to 2 and 2 to 1 rotation with only instant spells, you can easily weave in needed OGCDs. Nevertheless, try to always start off your rotation of Fountain of Fire and Brand of Purgatory as soon as possible, and land 2 revelations with your Phoenix. Now everything is repeated, and you just have to stick to all the key things that I mentioned. Never let your dots run off, and in the best case, cast no Rune 2, Rune 3 or 4 without them being present. Always use Energy Drain when it's ready. Don't delay any of your summons or trances unless your Try Disaster's cooldown has nearly finished, then wait 1 moment to take advantage of their reset. And always remember to prevent the clipping of spells through OGCDs by using Rune 2 or 4 right after Rune 3 to weave in the OGCD you want, and in the best case, if possible, you wait with using OGCDs for Dreadwyrm Trance or Firebird Trance, without delaying Energy Drain or else. Just do it! And these are the stances of the Summoner, but let me cover some other abilities and spells for you, before looking at the opener in detail. First of all, avoid using Swift Cast offensively, because it is your most precious resource in getting your teammates back into the fight. That really can make a big difference of winning or losing. The only time where you can use it easily is when you are completely certain that no one is dying in the next 60 seconds. For example, when clearing those brambles at Titania in the first phase. And of course, make use of Shorecast for knockback nullification, which can be useful at Titan or other bosses. Addle and Lucid Dreaming, however, are quite optional. Just throw them in if you have space for OGCDs and no other ones at your disposal at the moment. And now to the opener, which actually is Tsundere's easy Bahamut opener, with some little changes to make it a bit easier for all of those who really struggle with delaying and unnatural stance placement of the actual summoner gameplay and rotation. Therefore, we are starting a bit different. We are casting Rune 3 3 seconds pre-pull. Use Pet Attack and let a Rune 2 follow to prevent clipping, and instantly use Try Disaster, followed by Dreadwyrm Trance. Here, you could use Rune 2 easily after using Try Disaster to get its full potency, but I personally favor the complete avoidance of any form of clipping. Nevertheless, arrived in Dreadwyrm Trance, we want to get Energy Drain into our target as soon as possible, followed by one of our Aggie Assaults, use Rune 3 of course, followed by other Aggie Assaults and Devotion to buff our party into a solid synergy window. Rune 3 again, and now choose a potion if you can afford it. Continue with Rune 3 and weave in the next Aggie Assault, followed by Enkindle. Then another Rune 3 followed by the last Aggie Assault and Festa. And this is the point where we split our ways from the easy Bahamut version a bit. If you want to take into account a perfect dot lineup in the next cycles of your rotation, use Try Disaster instead of Festa, which makes all the stuff a bit more complicated, but grants you around 160 potency gain over more than a minute. Anyways, because the rotation is difficult enough, let us just stick to Festa and continue with another Rune 3 directly followed by Death Flare. Now we're heading instantly into the Bahamut phase by clicking Summon Bahamut right during the recast timer of our previously weaved Rune 3. And now comes the genius trick from our summoner sensei. Because having a summoning sickness, similar to the summoned creatures in Magic the Gathering, Bahamut won't react to any form of action you do for about 1 second. Therefore, unlike it was in Stormblood, we will use a hard cast Rune 3 and let this be followed by Rune 4, from which we now should have 4 procs at our disposal in the best case, and let an Akhmorn and Festa follow. Then we will repeat with another 3 Rune 3 spells, because having a higher potency with them and quite some time until the dots are running off. Then after the third Rune 3, directly weave in another Rune 4, followed by the second Akhmorn and try Disaster to reapply the dots. Replace this with Festa if you have chosen the standard easy Bahamut way. And after that sequence again, weave in the last Rune 4s or 2s if you lost procs to movement earlier, because otherwise you won't reach the perfect 8 worm waves, which should always be our goal in Bahamut Phase. Then follows another Summoner Stance phase, where you could build up your Phoenix phase. That kinda is much easier and logical. Just remember, if you have taken the way of the Sensei, then you have to delay your first Phoenix phase by about 10 seconds for the perfect raid buff synergy. And that's an example for the rotation, which is quite easy but mainly sticks to every mechanic that is important for good DPS. So like always, let us take a look into AoE damage and dungeon handling with the summoner as protagonist. Our first goal should always be to get our dots on every target that is pulled. Therefore make use of Bane, which now doesn't require any resource anymore, just has a 10-second cooldown, so wait until everything is stacked well and use Try Disaster followed by Bane. Attention here, never use Bane on a target that already got his dots through Bane, because he will spread the weak dots around. After that, try to always follow a priority list of spells, while summoning Garuda at 2 or more targets. There your Aggie Assaults deal AoE damage. Her Enkindle is quite heavy when used against multiple foes, and if your Bahamut or Phoenix is summoned, or you find yourself in Dreadwyrm trance, use Enkindle or Death Flare before one of your enemies is going to meet its end, even if that cancels your actual rotation. On 3 or more targets, all this gets even more important, and above that, we change every of our single target spell versions to the AoE version, like Energy Drain to Energy Siphon, Rune spells to Outburst and Pain Flare instead of Festa. When weaving in OGCDs like for example Aggie Assaults or Pain Flare, wait for your trances, or use Rune 4 to avoid clipping like in single target occasions. At 5 or more targets, this is no matter anymore, because Outburst will hit way heavier than a clip global would cost you. So just weave in what you need and push out every of your big AoEs like Bahamut or Phoenix and Kindle or Death Flare on as many targets as possible, while spamming in Outbursts into the most centered foe of the pack. And always keep up your dots with Bane. And that's mainly everything you need to know. And thanks to Tsundere Imouto and his amazing work, I hope you could get a good impression on how the Summoner combat system works. And when sticking to the basics and tips I've presented you, there is no obstacle in your way to reach heavy DPS numbers and impressive support to your group. In any case, the Summoner is the ultimate weapon for any progress group in difficult content, or a powerhouse in dealing DPS in dungeons, duty roulette or world content. Don't let yourself be distracted by other opinions who tell that the Summoner is broken or something like that. He may have issues, but these are only visual if you go very deeply into theory crafting, and still then, the Summoner is a solid choice for a DPS job. Again, many thanks to Sensei Tsundere for providing me that in-detail knowledge to share it with you, and I will inform you of course when he finished his work on his written and extensive guide. Thank you all for spending your time and watching this video, and I hope that it helped you out with the Summoner. And of course, that you had some entertainment out of it. Keep loving Final Fantasy, hit the sub button, and see you in the next video. Until then, take care and conjure the most powerful summoning magic to overcome any obstacle.
That magic is a royal disappointment. Come!
I ordered that he fling himself from the balcony.
This may tingle a bit.
It is nothing to me. I have lived in darkness for ages. No more.
How you would end it. Now it is over, Majesty. What will you do? Banish the demons and bring peace?